It's already 6. Okay. Good evening, sir. We are live now. So I welcome to all the viewers in this conversation. Karma Foundation, in association with Ahmedabad Book Club and Pan Macmillan India, has come with an interesting conversation about the book Sultan, the Legend of Hyder Ali, with the author Shubhendra G. So we welcome you, sir, wholeheartedly, and
Thank
thank
you.
you for giving your such immense valuable time. And apart from that, I would like to say that the author Shubhendra G is an avid traveler. He loves to explore places that have fallen through the cracks of mainstream history. His primary interest is unrevealing the lost stories of early modern India through field research and analyzing long forgotten military accountant. So this was all that I have gotten in your bio. Now our viewers
Mhm.
would like to know that are you the same when it comes to this famous author Shubhendra Ji, or you are different as a person? Do tell our viewers about that. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, first of all. Uh, and So basically, I'm a traveler, and I just go around hiking hills and run down places to know more about the history of the land. That's my primary interest, and I'm from Bangalore, and so my focus is on the history of South India, more predominantly on the mid 18th century and 17th century. That's my primary interest. So I just combine my interest of hiking with my curiosity to know more about the land where I live, and that's how Sultan came about. Sultan, the legend of Hyder Ali, a king from Karnataka. The stories come out here.
All right. So thank you so much, sir. And also this book that we have been reading in our history books about the legend of
Mhm.
Hyder Ali. So like, how did this idea struck into your head to come up with such a topic? Because it's the thing that every youngster has read in his books. So how did this
Yes,
idea strike your head that you should go for this particular king? Why not any other king?
yes. So for many years, like I mentioned, I have been hiking up the hills around Bangalore, and there's one thing which I found which was common across these hills. There were these forts, bastions, rundown fort walls on these hills. And when I spoke with the locals and asked them who built them, they used to tell me that this was built by Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. And all of these locals, they have these amazing stories about these kings, on how they fought the battles, and how this fort was built, and things like that. So these piqued my interest, and I wanted to know more about them. Surprisingly, there wasn't much available, uh, say in written format or in any other format. And in fact, the most reliable records that I could get hold of were more than 200 to 50 years old. And so, but I still did get hold of them. I started reading them, and this was an incredible story. This was a story that had to be told, and that's how I started reading more about this king and his kingdom, and I wanted to put his story on paper. And today we have Sultan, the Legend of Hyder Ali, as a book.
Wow. And so also when you talk about the book, the cover is full of a king who is on a horse fighting a battle. So how did you come up with such an interesting cover book and also the title? So do tell our viewers about that, the title and the
Sure.
book cover.
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to thank Pan Macmillan for helping me out with the cover and the title and other things which goes beyond writing. The team at Pan Macmillan has helped me a lot with the cover and a lot of things in the book. Coming to the cover and the title, so Hyder Ali is from a pre-modern era where you had a mix of horses and guns. People used to fight on horses with guns, unlike swords in the much older era. So we wanted to convey this message or this idea that this is a story of an era where modern weapons were along with the the older means of warfare, and that's how this cover has come up. Again, I would like to express my gratitude to the team, the graphics team, and the creative team at Pan Macmillan to helping me in getting this really amazing cover and the title out.
All right. And so like when did you started writing this book? How much year ago you started planning? You had this vivid thought that I'll write about this. When that happened?
Yes. So I mean, like I mentioned, it was mostly hiking which initiated this idea, but there's a lot of research that went into the book. In fact, I had to read a lot of records, a lot of historical records, military accounts, and whatnot. Now, especially these military accounts, they have their own biases. Let's say if I read English records, obviously they would not speak kindly about Hyder Ali, or if I read about the Mysore records, they would probably exaggerate what the Mysore kingdom was doing at that point in time. So the research itself took a lot of time, reading this military records, getting this story right. And once I had the entire narrative I had the entire narrative of the story of the Mysore kingdom, I still did find there were a lot of holes, gaps which were not answered in this record. So at that point in time, I started with my field research. So I started traveling. I started traveling across Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, looking for places which would help me fill up these gaps in the narrative. It was a mix of both reading, studying historical records and my own field research, which formed the base of the story. And I didn't want to skimp on my research, so it took a little more than 2 years to get my research done, to get the complete coherent story of Hyder Ali and the Mysore kingdom of 18th century. And then once I had all of that, it took me a year to write the book, get it nailed down in this polished format that we have today. So yeah, all in all, a little more than 3 years.
So it is. Yeah, so it is quite a journey. And in these 3 years, have you ever felt that you should procrastinate this? Like we youngsters do, we procrastinate stuff. So have you ever felt that, no, I should do it next year? Because we had lockdown, we had a great pandemic, global pandemic indeed. So that thought ever crossed your head that I should procrastinate it? Did it happen to you that? Yeah.
And so I'm really passionate about history. I'm really passionate about field research. I love doing it. There was no, I was getting out as much as possible to get the story done. So procrastination was probably the last thing on my mind, because it's something which I love doing. I'm really passionate about this. In fact, I just couldn't find enough time to do this. I just wish there was more time for me to get this, to get more information. But end of the day, like I mentioned, I didn't skimp on anything, and I got it. I got the entire narrative nailed down, and I got the story in a book format. So procrastination was probably the last thing on my mind, because I just love doing research, I love reading history, and I love writing. So all of them came together here.
All right. So this is an amazing message that we all youngsters and all the viewers should take it, that procrastination should be the last thing that should cross your mind when you're passionate about something. Thank you, sir, for sharing that. And also, apart from that, so when did you realize that you wanted to be an author? When you were like a child or a teenager, when did that epiphany moment happen that you want to be an author, full-fledged author? When did that happen to you?
So I still haven't, it's still not in my mind that I'm an author. It's just that the book has happened. Like I mentioned, it was yes, of course. So what happened was, like I mentioned, I love history. I love reading stories. Just like every other young boy or young girl, I love stories told by our elders, by our friends, or people around us. I love reading them. And this thing just built on one on top of another, and I wanted to know more. That's how I started reading military records and the whole historical records. And thankfully, I had all the means to travel around to do my field research. Again, which I love traveling. I love going to obscure places and unraveling things. It's something which I love doing. So all of these things came together. Being an author was never on my mind. It was just getting these things, doing these things, reading old records, going to obscure places, and thankfully I had the skill to write something, and I wanted to write the story. The story was just incredible. It was almost bordering unbelievable, and like I mentioned, I love writing, and all of these things came together, and I wrote a book. The story came out in a book format, and the next thing you know, I'm an author, and the book is in a print format. So yeah, author. Wow. Yes, I'm thankful I'm an author now.
So such a down-to-earth approach you have towards this success story that you have associated with your name. So you loved writing, and that's how this book came into this whole picture, and it is now between the readers. Sir, I have another question for you. So like whenever you write something which is very historic, so there are facts related to it. There are also emotions and philosophical thoughts related to it. Do tell me how difficult it was to connect the real story with a little bit of touch of fantasy. Is the book contains all the real facts, or it has some fantasy fiction also? You tell us that.
Yeah. So my primary interest is authenticity. So the story that is there in the book, it's authentic. So it's primarily a historical record in a fictionalized format or in a narrative format with dialogues and things similar to that. So for me, whenever I write any book or the future books which is going to come out, authenticity is my primary interest. I want the real history to be told to the people at large. So the book is primarily an historical account. Now, of course, reading history book is really not an appealing thing for quite a few of them, which is why I've written it in a fictionalized format. And when you write in a fictionalized format, you do need to bring in a bit of emotions, a bit of uh, uh, fictional elements, if I could say. But they are at minimal at best in these books. In fact, that's one of the things which I would want to improve. I want to improve my craft, and one of the things which is there on my list is to improve this bit where I can bring out more emotions and more human elements or human personalities into my writing. That's something which I need to improve on, and I'm hoping that in the future works that comes up. But then again, my primary focus and my primary objective here is historical authenticity. The story that you read should be what actually happened in the past, but in an easy to read way.
Wow. So you stick to the original facts because you love history. So you want people to read out the real history. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So already your book is a bestseller. So to tell us that according to you, what is the definition of bestseller? So what do you think about it?
To be honest,
Yeah.
I'm just happy if someone reads the story about our own land, our own people of the past, and the great things that I've done or the deeds that I've done, which has long-lasting impact on our lives which we live today. I'm just happy if people read and know more about our history, know more about our culture and our rich heritage. That's enough for me. That's what gives me satisfaction, and I'm happy with that. Bestseller, if it happens, it's just a bonus. I'm grateful for the support given by the people, by the readers, and by everyone who has helped me through this journey. But yeah, if you enjoy the book, for me, it's mission accomplished.
All right. So that was such a positive sentence that you said, that you don't believe in bestseller, you just believe in writing good stuff and people enjoying it. Okay. So
Yeah.
like I have read something about the book, that this book is set in this 18th century where the turmoil was brewing all over India. And the
Yeah.
country's south, Hyder Ali, an ordinary soldier, he rose through the ranks to take over Mysore, a small kingdom that was in danger, being swallowed by the Marathas in the Nizam of the Deccan. So this is just a brief which is available on Google about the book. To tell us more about the book and the story, so that our viewers who love history and some of them who don't, they will really find an interest to read it. Do tell us about the book, sir. Yeah.
Sure. So by the end of 18th century, or rather by the start of 18th century, the Mughal Empire was in decline, and South India is quite far from Delhi, and you really don't have control over these places. And at the same time, we had the rise of Marathas and the Nizam in the south. So there was a lot of competition. You still had Mughals, which were on the decline, but they were still a force to reckon with. You had the Nizam, who were one of the once upon a time governors of the Mughal Empire, who had their own army and they had a lot of money. And the Marathas, the great Marathas themselves, were rising up the ranks in the power hierarchy of the land. And in the midst of all these things, we had the Europeans also landing up on the coast and demonstrating their capabilities, which was never ever seen in India. So amidst all this is essentially anarchy here. It was chaos. It was everyone fighting against each other. Everyone wanted to be on the top. It was essentially anarchy in South India. It was at this time when a small Jagirdar had a son. Not only his first son, his fourth son. So that was Hyder Ali. So Hyder Ali was essentially a common man, an ordinary person, and fate had it that he lost his father. He lost all the wealth whatever little wealth that his father had gained through his work. He lost everything. So essentially, his childhood was an ordinary boy who had lost everything in a world where everything was chaotic, everything was anarchic. And then fate had that he moved to Srirangapatna, that was the Mysore kingdom's capital, where Mysore kingdom itself was the risk of being subsumed by Nizam and Marathas, which were operating there. So this is the background. It's almost Mysore Empire should never have existed. It was in the danger of being swallowed. But then Hyder Ali was a man of extreme intellect, of immense drive, and an unmatched courage. So he rose to the ranks of the tiny Mysore Empire. He started taking on started taking on empires which are far larger than him, and through his career, he actually went about defeating the Nizam, Marathas, the Europeans, and he forged an empire, an extremely strong empire, right under their noses, which is what makes the story incredible. If you look at the background of the mid-18th century, no one would have even thought that Mysore Kingdom would be one of the strongest empires of the land for more than half a century. And nobody would even believe that it was an ordinary soldier who rose through the ranks in such a short time to become the de facto ruler of Mysore Kingdom and actually defeat the English. In fact, one of the key things which made me love the story was we always see that English defeated that king, English defeated this king, English was just unstoppable force. Yes, they were extremely strong. They had battle technique. They had their methods of warfare was far superior to what we had in India. But what we forget is that there were Indian kings who actually defeated the English and pinned them down. If you read history, you see that the English just overran Bengal, but it took some time for them to take over South India. It's primarily because of people like Hyder Ali who were able to notch up victories one after another against the English and expand his empire and show that yes, an Indian king also can have a strong empire against strong opponents like the English or other Europeans. But this is what was the incredible bit which inspired me to write the story. So the entire book is about how Hyder Ali rose through the ranks of an ordinary soldier to forge an empire right under a lot of more powerful enemies, and how we went about defeating the English in the First Anglo-Mysore War. So this is what the essence of the story. It's a life journey of Hyder Ali, the political history of South India of mid-18th century, which is, in my opinion, it's just an incredible story which was never been told, and that's what the book is all about.
And now the story has been told loud and about in the world. Everyone is reading it. So, sir, you just gave us about it. It just seemed like a history class that I am into a history lecture, and you are giving me all this historical fact. So, thank you so much for that. And apart from that, so when we talk about the book is based on historical facts, and it has a background of an princely state wherein someone rose, and it also has a taste of patriotism, where you can feel someone fighting for their motherland, right? And so, apart from Hyder Ali, which is your favorite character in the book, apart from the main character, which is your favorite character from the book?
So, the thing is, that was a good question. In fact, I never thought about having a favorite character in the book. So, because this goes from the time when he's young right up to his death, there are a lot of people who are part of this journey. There are a lot of people who played a key role in the 18th century history of South India. So the journey goes across various places, across various people and whatnot. The person whom I liked plays a very small role in the book, and that's his brother Shahbaz. Shahbaz is his elder brother and his first mentor. It's essentially his love for his younger brother, that is Hyder Ali, which pushed or propelled Hyder Ali to do greater things in his life. And I love Shahbaz. Shahbaz is in the early parts of the story, and his sacrifices to safeguard his brother is something which I love. And in fact, his sacrifices is what gave the initial impetus for Hyder Ali to become such a great ruler. So yeah, Shahbaz is one person whom I really like in the book.
All right. So the brother that supported another brother who rose to from rags to riches and then fought for the country. Yes. And apart from this, there are many people who has written historic books. There are many writers and authors who have written. So can you tell us that how this book and your writing would be different from these authors who have already written historic books? How it is different?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, my primary focus is on historical authenticity. I want the true story to be out. So my primary focus was on the research that I've done and the outcome of the research to have the true story. Like I mentioned, you have a lot of historical records which has its own biases and which will not give us the full picture. So I actually went about reading records from both the English, Marathas, French, Mysore themselves. So the story that you see here is mostly history, essentially history, but in an easy to read format, in a way which it should be appealing to people. And how is my work different from others? like I mentioned, I need to improve my craft when it comes to human emotions, personalities, and character development. What I've seen is other historical novels uh, have a lot of impetus on the character development or the emotions and things related to that, which actually makes the book really enjoyable. And that's why I'm a little different. I'm more focused on the authenticity, the facts. Hopefully, when the future works, I'll be able to scale up the human element as well in my future works. That's one key differentiator which I see between my book and the others.
Wow. So this one point makes a lot of difference, the whole difference in your writing and the other writing from other authors. And also, so when you talk about the plot, so for you, what is important, the plot or the characterization? Because in your book, the plot is already given because you have a background. But in general,
Yeah.
what is important for you, the plot or the characterization for the book? Yeah.
So again, I think I'm biased because I'm mostly focused on history. For me, I'm mostly a plot-driven person rather than a
Yeah.
character-driven person. But then again, I love reading books which have powerful characters or characters which I can associate with, and hopefully in the future works I also bring that in. But as of now, and it's still a plot-driven approach which I take because at the end of the day, I want to tell a story of what happened, and so I want to get the details right. So I'm mostly focused on that. But then again, hopefully in my future works, we would have a lot of more character development and characters which people can associate with.
All right. Okay, so since you have written this very interesting, full of characters book, and for you, plot is the heart of the book, like as you mentioned, and you were like so straightforward, no diplomacy. You just said that plot is important for you. Okay, so in future, if anytime this book is converted into this big picture, if it goes into theaters and it goes into cinemas, do you want this book to be seen all over the world, all over the globe on bigger picture? Do you have any like point of view about that? If it becomes that famous, yeah, how could
That is
you?
amazing.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. But I never thought about it. But that would be amazing. Seeing my story on the silver screen, that would be amazing. I would love that. But yeah, like I mentioned, that thought never crossed my mind. I'll be
Right.
grateful if that thing actually materializes. But yeah, I'm just if it happens, I'm just excited. I'm just happy that uh, 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 people can see in another form, in another media form, this incredible story. But then again, yes, I would defer to the powers that be if they want to take this book forward and put it in another media format. But I'm just excited if it happens.
That's what it should happen, and more people should know about this book across the globe. And so also apart from that, when we write a book, we always have an issue while publishing it. So does it happen with you also? Like, how was your journey with the publishing house, and how much time it took for you to find a good publisher, good publishing house, and then publish the book? Yeah, tell us your story.
Uh, sure. So I'm lucky. I got an agent who worked for me. He put in a lot of effort in working with the publishing houses to get my work published. So I'm always grateful to him. And it was his effort that helped me put my story on paper, put my story in such a esteemed publishing house like Pan Macmillan. So I'm lucky. To keep it short, I'm lucky that I found an agent who sought to keep my interest at the foreground and help me get my book published. So I'm just grateful and thankful for my agent for making this happen. There was not there's not much effort. I've heard a lot of stories of how people put a lot of effort. They had to go through a lot of difficult journeys to bring their work into reality. But then I just consider myself one extremely lucky person to get in touch or have this good friend of mine who also who put my work forward to the publishing houses and got my work published. Yeah, I'm thankful to my agent for this.
All right. So for you, all the dots were placed into right position, and you got the publishing very easy.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
very handy for you
I
it
would
was. So you are very lucky.
uh,
Yeah.
it's not it was easy for me. I'm sure it will be very difficult for the agent. So I'm just extremely grateful for his efforts and his work in getting this work done. I'm sure it would have been a
Because it
difficult journey or it would have been difficult for him.
so because generally when people write, they finish up writing in a year or two, but then the publishing stuff, editing and everything, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
But so you were like quite lucky in that, no problem. And so apart from that, so any other genre you would prefer to write, apart from historic books? Any other thing in the pipeline that you're working on? And when can we expect your next book? Yeah.
Yes. So right now I'm focused on historical novels. My next work is going to come out next year. It's about Shivaganga Queen Rani Velu Nachiyar. The Warrior Queen of Shivaganga, Rani Velu Nachiyar is the name of my next work. It's going to be out next year. I love telling stories which people have forgotten, which it's just gone through the seas of history. There are a lot of amazing stories which people just don't know, and it's my endeavor to bring the stories out to the public. So my next work is on Rani Velu Nachiyar. It's a story of sheer grit. A woman who lost everything in her life tries back her kingdom from the hands of the English. I think she's one of the rare few Indian rulers who actually managed to get back her kingdom from the English and actually rule for a decade. Nobody even knows, very few people know about these things. And that's the next work. So for now, I'm mostly focused on historical fiction. I do get asked if I'm going to write anything else apart from historical fiction. For now, I'm just following what I love. That is telling history in an easy format, in a way which people can take it in a it's palatable, which is easy to understand as well. That's my primary objective right now: history, and historical fiction.
Okay, so thank you, Sin. And already you have given a spoiler that next year we are going to read another book, which is again going to be an historic book. And so apart from that, do you have any another part 2 for this book, Sultan, the Legend of Hyder Ali? Is any part 2 coming soon? Or yeah.
So for now, I have nothing on my mind because I have a few works already in pipeline. As of now, there's nothing on my mind, but I'm open to the idea of continuing the story. Maybe when time permits, or when all things fall in place, maybe I can pursue that. But for now, my primary goal is to extract these unknown stories, which people don't know, but which people should know, and bring it out in the form of paper on a book format, and people should know about that. That's my primary focus, and I have a few works in pipeline. Yeah, maybe someday, God willing, maybe part 2.
All right, so like we can hope for part 2 later or sooner. Maybe it can come, right? Okay, it would be great. It would be a surprise for the readers, for all of us, if we come up with part 2 or even a trilogy. A trilogy would be great. As matter of that, yeah. And so also apart from that, I have another question for you. Like there are many people who writes about history, right? As you have also written. So which of the author have inspired you? Like who has been your inspiration in your this writing journey, or when you grew up as an author in the beginning, who was your inspiration? Yeah.
So the book which got me hooked to history was. This is a very nice book, and this was when I was in school, and this book had a bit of history, romance, chivalry, and everything, and that was what got me hooked to history. And I'm hoping that my work matches up to this work. So, in fact, my favorite work is Sir Walter Scott's Ivanhoe. That was one of the books which I read when I was in school, which got me hooked to history and historical fiction. And I'm hoping that my work emulates that great work. That's how I got hooked to history and historical fiction.
All right. So you are a proper history person. I mean, since the beginning, you have all this love for history. That's amazing. And also, sir, when we talked about history, history is quite boring for few people, because when I used to read history in my school, or when people read history, it's quite very lengthy and a lot of dates are there. So do tell our viewers that if they wish to write something about history, like something related to historic story, how they can make it interesting. For example, if someone is about to write an historic book, how they make it interesting for the readers.
Yeah. So the first thing is you have to stay away from dates. The thing is, people love stories, and we need to, at least I try to write it in a story format. So when you take a historical record or a military record, it's just a whole bunch of numbers, dates, a lot of names, a lot of things which just would bore a person. Now, that's not the way to go about writing history. If you want to write it for pleasure, if you want people to know more about history. So the first thing which I did was write it in a story format, because like everybody else, I also love stories. And we all grew up on stories. We all grew up on mythical stories, historical stories. We just that they were mostly focused on the story bit rather than the history bit. And so my research and everything goes into getting the facts right. But my writing actually focuses on getting the story, in an easy to read and easy to understand format. So I would take all the I would do all the hard work of getting all the facts right,
Yeah.
um, and then
Yes, sir.
getting all those details right. But then I wouldn't want to bore the people with this were the dates and this were the number of soldiers, this was the weapons used, and this is what happened. I just wanted to be a story where people know at a higher level what is happening, but at the same time be granular enough to know how it actually happened. So yes, to summarize, I would just say people love stories. If you get your history written in a story format, I'm sure people would love it.
All right. So, like stories we all love, but you should know the art of saying it, the art of narrating it. That's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, apart from history of our country, which other country's history you love the most, or which other country's history really interests you most, apart from our country?
So I love because history is it's vast, and wherever I go, I like to know more about the land, the people, and the culture. So I do not have any preference as such, which I like, which I don't, based on where I visit and where I live or where I have access to. I just go reading about that. For some time, I was reading about history of Central Asia and the Great Game and things like that. For now, for example, I'm reading a lot about the Middle East and how things went about during the era of British. So it's I don't have anything as a favorite as such, but wherever I have an opportunity to go to, I would like to know more about the land, the people, their culture, their heritage, and it's just I'm agnostic, or rather I do not have favorites. I just love to know more about the past, and that's how it is. So whatever is there in my around me for now, I just pick that up and I start reading it. Be it Middle East, be it Central Asia, I just start reading more about them, see what it is all about. Or for example, in India, for example, I was mostly focused on the military history of Nayars and Kerala. When you start visiting these places, you want to know more. So whichever place I get an opportunity to visit, I start reading about them, I start studying about them, and that's how it goes about. All of them are my favorites, to be politically
Wow.
correct.
So basically, you love traveling, and that's how you love history. Because wherever you travel, you love to go through the artifacts
Yeah,
and the facts about that place. So that's how your
yeah,
interest in history comes into reality. Yeah.
yes,
And
absolutely.
so also when we read history, like there are so many characters in historic stories, there are so many characters, and in this book also there are so many characters. So do tell us that what is the crux and what is the soul of the story of the book. If I have to ask you in a line or in brief, how would you say to our viewers that what is the soul of the book, apart from the fighting background and the British and everything? What is the soul? Yeah.
The thing is, if in one line, what I would always say is this is the political history of South India of 18th century. Yes, it's a story of Hyder Ali, but this is Hyder Ali is one of the main characters in this political canvas or this canvas of politics that was taking place in 18th century India. So end of the day, it's essentially a political history of the Mysore kingdom, the Marathas, Nizam, and the Europeans. That's what it is actually. If you just scratch the surface of the story, you would say that it's a lot more. There's a lot to history than battles and dates and people. There's a lot of politics happening. There's a lot of actions which are taken which has long-term implications, and that's what I've tried to bring out here. It's the political history, much more. Of course, there are battles and there are conspiracies, assassinations, and whatnot. Those are the bits which makes the story exciting, but the larger canvas is essentially a political history of South India of 18th century.
All right. So the soul of the book is the political history of South India,
Politics,
and so also
yeah.
since this book, yeah, yeah, since the book is of 18th century, do tell us that according to you, do you think that the things are same in the modern India as it was on the 18th century? This is quite a difficult question, but I love to hear your point of view. Like, do we have Hyder
Sure,
Alis nowadays? We don't
sure,
have
sure.
British now. So do you think the condition is same? Yeah.
Sure. The thing is, like I mentioned, this is politics, and politics was same 100 years back. Politics was same 1,000 years back, and the politics was same today as well. And yes, we may say there are no British. In fact, there are Britishers came, or the English came as traders. Even today, we have traders, if I could say, in India from people across the sea. And we're not seeing battles. We're not seeing battles in the real world, but there are battles happening which do not involve weapons. And so, for example, I'll take one example from a weapons point of view. So, what is one of the key elements in the story is that, and what you can see in the cover as well, is that you had old archaic weapons and instruments, like you had horses, you had knives, kabads, swords, whatnot. At the same time, we had this influx of guns. Nobody even thought that Navy would play a significant role in controlling warfare or controlling lands. So it's very similar right now. It's just that you have to remove. So right now we may think guns and missiles or what would help us win the battles, but there are other things. There's a lot of things that happen in the information era or in the digital world, which does have an impact on the real world. Just like how navies on the ships on the sea had an impact on the land, we have things which are there in the digital era, which is having an impact on the real life. So we can always draw parallel with what was happening in the past to what is happening today. Because politics, if you distill it, it's essentially the same. You have a lot of competitors, conspirators, a lot of new things coming in, and it's the same thing. It's just that for now we do not see those plain naked fights or battles on a battlefield. The battles are still being fought, but it's on a different field, and they're in a different place, which is not visible to us in the real world. So yes, it's essentially the same. So if you want to know if there is Hyder Alis in today's world, probably yes. There are people who have come up from the bottom, who have gone up to reach the top rungs of power, and we have seen it. Yes, we have seen it in the past. We've seen it right now. We'll definitely see it in the future. And like I mentioned, there are big powers all across. There's competition, things like that. I mean, you just have to draw parallels between what was happening then and what was happening today, which is why I love history. The thing is, things just keep repeating. What I've seen in the book, for example, another example is the importance of trade, the importance of money when it comes to running an empire, fighting a battle. It's the same today. Just bravery alone doesn't win battles. You need to have a lot of money. You need to have bankers. You need to have traders behind you. It's the same thing today as well. So history is just repeating what was there 1,000 years back. It repeats itself 200 years back, and it's going to happen in the future as well. So yes, we can draw a lot of parallels from the story of this one to today.
So, sir, you correctly proved that metaphor that history repeats itself. And yes, we still have the battlefields, but the scenarios and the background of the battlefields have changed. People have that in their mind, and sometimes we don't even know that we have been played and we are already there in the battle fighting. We don't know that. Yeah. So you beautifully connected this 18th century history versus 21st century conditions. So thank you for enlightening us on that. And so also, you are more into this 18th century and 19th century historical characters, or you are interested into even like before that, like in 15th century characters or 16th century characters? Which interests you the more, the older history or the new history? Yeah, the modern one.
So it was just chance of fate that my travels involved places which had a lot of incidents in the 18th century, and that's how my interest peaked on this period. But I love 15th, 16th century history as well. For example, in Karnataka, one of the greatest rulers, Krishna Deva Raya, was from 15th and 16th century. He is held in high esteem here in these places. We all know his story. It's just that it was by chance that I visited places which had a lot of things going on in the 18th century. And yes, if God willing, if there are opportunities for me to write about earlier history or more recent history, I would go for it. As and when the opportunity presents itself, I would pursue them. But for now, chance had it that, or fate had it that I had to write about these things, or was given access to these kind of records or these kind of places, and so I wrote about them. Who knows what happens in the future? If God wills, probably yes, I will write about them as well.
All right. Okay. So if given a chance, so clearly, so you explained that you don't have any favorite. It's just you've been to places wherein it was, luckily it happened to be the kings and the places were from 18th century. Okay. And sir, apart from that, if given a chance, if you have this opportunity of converting this historic story into a sci-fi story, do you think would it be converted? Like, would people love to see or read when a historic story has been converted into a modern sci-fi story with the same backdrop? So, what is your point
Sure.
of view on that? Yeah.
I love science fiction books. Uh, and in fact, I think probably I've read a lot, an equal amount of science fiction books um, as history books. And what I see in history books is it's essentially a social narrative of what we're seeing today or what we might see in the future, or rather, it's mapping what has happened in the past to the future. So there's a lot of elements of historicity, elements of social narrative, philosophy, which is very common in historical fiction book as well. So I think it's quite it would be an easy jump from historical fiction to science fiction. And like I mentioned, I love this science fiction as much as historical fiction. Like we have Dune. Dune is a book written by Frank Herbert. It's if you it's a science fiction with a lot of futuristic elements, but if you scratch the surface, you see that it has this elements which can be linked to a lot of historical characters, a lot of historical incidents, and things like that. Or if you read Isaac Asimov's Foundation or the Robot series, it's essentially a social narrative, but he maps what was happening at that point in time or a little behind in a futuristic setting. So I believe it's going to be an easy jump from historical fiction to science fiction, and that's an exciting. That's something which I would love to explore. I think these kind of stories, futuristic or in a science fictionistic setting.
Wow. So thank you for showing us a correlation between how science fiction is a modern version of historic book. Yeah. So am I audible to you, right?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Okay. And so apart from writing about South Indian history, are you planning to write something about the North Indian history or the Western zone or the Eastern zone? Are you planning to write about that also? That interests you,
Um,
history from other parts of the
yes,
country?
of course.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, the reason why I picked up South Indian history was I could not find much about South Indian history. North Indian history is well recorded. There is a lot of sources, a lot of works which I absolutely love, and I have learnt a lot about the powers that were, be it 18th century or earlier or later. There's a lot of things which have already been written about North Indian history. I would love to write about North Indian history, but I'm just a small person in front of these towering figures who have written about North Indian history. There are towering figures who have written about South Indian history as well, but I could not find much. So it's just my own small effort in bringing out stories of South India to the larger public. When coming to the world history, yes, my travels have taken me to places wherever I find opportunity. I would love to write about that as well. But like I mentioned, I'm from Bangalore. I'm from South India, and I just couldn't find enough like how I would find for a North Indian history or sailors in Gujarat. There's a lot of history written about Gujarat as well. I just couldn't find them, and I took it upon me that I need to tell these stories. And I love this, and I love these things to happen here, which people just don't know about. And yeah, the Sultan Legend of Hyder Ali is a small endeavor to fill that gap, if there was one.
All right. So thank you for sharing that experience that you would love to explore more apart from South Indian history. And also, I have two small questions for you. So do tell me a single word that describes you the best as an author or as an individual. One word, one adjective you'll have to use to describe yourself. Yeah.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky that
Okay.
I got to
Yeah.
lucky. Lucky is the one word. Yes, I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate that I'm from a great place like South India or India, where there is so much rich heritage and culture, and a lot of great people have lived here and breathed and taken our country to greater heights. I'm fortunate for that. I'm fortunate that I had the means to travel to all these places. I'm fortunate that there was this interest in me to know more about this. I'm fortunate that I had some skills to write. And of course, I'm fortunate that I have an agent, a publishing house who believed in me and who brought out the story out into the for the larger audience. Yes, I'm lucky. I'm fortunate.
Lucky is your word.
Yes.
Unfortunate and slash lucky. You have to choose one word. So lucky is the word. Yeah. And sir, if ever if someone writes your autobiography, what would be the title of that according to you? That should also be in one word, like one adjective you have to use.
I don't know. Uh,
I don't know, cannot be a title. You'll have to say one.
yeah, yeah. One word is a little difficult, probably. So
So we give you
my
three words.
introvert is okay.
Yeah.
Uh, the historian, I don't know, the historian who brought out the story from. It's a difficult question. It's a good question. It's a difficult question. Yes. The little historian. I don't know. The little historian, because I'm just a small man compared to the towering figures who write, whether it's fiction or whether it's history. I'm just a small person trying to do in a small way what these great people have done to tell the story of our great nation to the public. So I'm just a small person. And I'm a wannabe historian. So I'll just say I'm a small historian.
Small historian and slash wannabe historian. All right, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, we did not even look into the clock, but it's already been 45 minutes and we have time barriers with StreamYard. But it was an amazing session talking to you. I never thought history could be so interesting. History lectures, it seemed as if I'm in a history class, history master class, and someone who is an already a historian, even though you are an author, but it seemed that you're a historian and you taught me so much. And all the viewers, to all the viewers. And so towards the end, that when we end the session, what are your share your wisdom of words for the young authors and for all the authors out there who are about to write or who are already writing? So what are your point of view? Yeah.
So we're going down this one word path. So I have only one word for aspiring authors: persevere. So I've mentioned I'm lucky, but to make the luck happen, there's a lot of hard work. Field research is hard work. Reading winter records is hard work. You will face obstacles. You will think, yes, you're not going ahead. You will face obstacles when getting your story into a book. You will face obstacles. It's just because I wrote a book doesn't mean that there's a lot of just happen. There's a lot of editing work which happens, which is extremely time consuming. You need to have a focus for the details. So there's a lot of hard work. So just one word for aspiring authors or youngsters: persevere. You will face obstacles. You will face things which will make you give up on things, but persevere. That's my only word of advice or uh, suggestion or recommendation to aspiring authors, because obstacles are part of life and you will have to overcome them, and the only way is persevere.
All right. So thank you, sir, for teaching the importance of hard work. That hard work only adds up to a little bit of luck. So if you work hard a lot, then only you get a little bit of lucky. So thank you, sir. And on behalf of Karma Foundation and Ahmedabad in Book Club, we are like so honored and we are more than happy and grateful for your presence. And we would like to know that how did you feel on this live stream? How was your experience interacting with us, Ahmedabad Book Club? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for listening to me. I'm grateful. I know that talking about history is boring, but then I tried my best to bring out the rich history of our past to a larger audience. It's 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 an honor, actually. It's just an honor to be here talking to you folks, telling about things which I love, and again, all I can say is thank you. I'm fortunate to be here, to have you interviewing me and having me talk about what I love. It's just that I'm fortunate, I'm lucky, and I'm grateful for what has been given to me. Thank you.
So thank you so much, sir. And I would say that we are fortunate, and this history class was not boring at all. It was very interesting, and if time permitted, we could have gone more for 2 hours. So this history lecture we were not bored of. And sir, thank you for talking your heart out about the best subject, about your favorite subject to talk about. So thank you, sir. At this point, we would end the live session, and I would request our volunteer